Well, if you haven't heard yet, my name is Josh. I'm the youth pastor here at Washington Cathedral, and so this is like my service right here. I've done this at the other two services, and last night, Saturday is a wonderful congregation. It's such a peaceful service, and Sunday morning at 9:30, I don't get a lot of experience and exposure there, but it was a great experience. But this is my service right here. You guys are my people. You guys also my people, but specifically, I get to work with the youth group. I have the joy to serve, teach, and love a very special group of people at this church. And I don't know if you remember your high school or middle school years, and you guys are in them right now, but these years are not easy. They're a lot of fun, and we try and have fun at our camps and at youth group, but they're not easy. They're full of challenges and heartbreak, and these are the years where you're learning what rejection feels like, and trying to figure out who you are and how you fit into the world and what you're going to do with your life, and being overwhelmed by busy schedules and the pressures to do well in sports and with your grades, and trying to keep all this up, and the realizations and decisions that are made at this time in these years can impact the rest of your life. And I get the privilege, along with a few wonderful, caring, and gifted volunteers, of being a part of all that and pointing these students to the love and mercy of Jesus Christ during all those challenges and all those joys of middle school and high school. I recently got to go with the team that went down to Honduras, like Linda said, to work with the two projects we support there in La Paz, Honduras. The project Nico, where it's a tutoring center for kids who aren't doing well in school. They live in a very poor community, and most of them aren't. Those kids that are in that program aren't doing well in school. And in Honduras, if you're not doing well in your grade, they don't hold you back. You just go up to the next grade. The way that it is there now, and so these students are kids in 6th grade who have like a 2nd grade reading level, and so we got to work with this tutoring center that's helping these kids succeed in school so they can make it all the way through and to graduate and get that valuable education. And then we worked with the San Jose orphanage, where these kids have very few adults in their lives who will show them that they're important, that they're valued, that they're cared for, and we got to be a part of that. And we got to witness what God was already doing down there, and come back and share with you about the great things that are happening, the wonderful people who have worked in these programs, who are running them. And real quick, I want to share a video. In the beginning of the video, you'll see pictures of San Jose, and then there'd be a group picture, and then those are the pictures of Nico. So just so you know, of some of our memories, some of the pictures and videos from the trip. And then while that's playing, I want to invite some of the team members who went on that trip to come on up and share a little bit about what we experienced there. Awesome. You guys can come a little closer if you want. Yeah. we had such a great trip, and I want to ask these guys a couple questions. And unfortunately, because there's so many of you here, we're not going to ask everyone all the questions. So we'll do this. I'm going to have you two answer the first question, and then, let's see, what's the second question? You two answer the second question. You answer the last question. How's that sound? Okay, cool. All right, so Marissa and Sarah, before going on this trip, what were you most nervous about? What were the hesitations or fears that you had going into this?
Well, kids, they talk really fast, and I was really worried about communicating with them, and they also speak in Spanish, and I've only had 3 years of Spanish, and I was really worried about that, but, it went okay, so that's good.
For me, I think, connecting with the kids, because, they can be judgmental sometimes, but they were really easy to connect with.
Yeah. All right, so Linda and Kelsey, can you share with us your favorite memory from the trip? And by the way, if you guys have these questions for everyone later, you can just come up and be like, hey, Marissa, what was your favorite memory? We would love to share with you, or myself. What was your favorite memory from the trip?
Okay, I'll try to keep it short and not cry. My favorite memory of the whole trip was the visit we did to the home of one of the students of Nico, Erica. And it was the three of us that got to go on. So this is kind of our memory. And going into this home, I met the grandma who was raising little Erica. And she's about, what do you think, about that tall? She was, and just about a powerhouse of might. And I was so impressed by her because she invited us into her home that her daughter had built for her by making adobe bricks and building this little square room. It was all dirt floors, no electricity, no sewer, no water, an outside kitchen of sorts. And in this kitchen, this grandmother made tortillas for money so that they could buy water jugs to have water to drink and to cook with and to bathe in. And that was just the most impressive. And I was so impressed with his grandma because she is uneducated. She's, just a small little thing. But she had to go to court and fight for custody of her granddaughter because the mother was a druggie who would have babies and give them up, but kept Erica. The father was killed by his uncle. And so, this poor little girl had no chance. But the grandma is giving her a chance. And when we, through the interpreter, asked how we could pray for her, she said, please pray that little Erica can stay in school and graduate from 8th grade so she can get a job. And to her, that was the big dream for her little girl. And it just put life in perspective for me.
I think one of my favorite parts of the trip was just getting the chance to really know all of the kids. It was a really small number, and so we got to connect with each of the kids and have a moment with them and love on them. And they're going through hard things. There's trauma in their lives, and as you continue to get to know them, you learn more things about what's going on. And there was a moment that we were playing inside. We were doing a craft of some sort, and it just started downpouring. It was one of those, if you've been to Honduras, or you've probably experienced it, one of those torrential downpours in the middle of the day for about 2 hours. You're going to have water up to your ankles for a little while. And it was just this moment where, and we had these tin roofs in the building, so the rain comes, it was just instant, it came down, it was just so loud. And we were all on the ground playing. And then it was just this simultaneous, we all just jumped up and booked it outside to run around and play in the rain. And it was so fun just to have this moment of pure joy on these kids' faces and get to experience that with them. And, of course, they're who are these crazy Americans running around in the rain? And, we're from Seattle, so we don't mind it so much, right? But they loved it. We played soccer, and it was just a really beautiful moment and a reminder of, the joy that, a child's joy, so. Yeah.
Last question. And actually, you saw in that video, there's a clip of us playing soccer in the rain. There's 3 clips playing soccer, and one of them was that time in the rain. And that's the one where I tripped the kid. Or it looks like I tripped the kid, and he fell over, and I kept going. He was okay, though. I looked back, and he was getting up. You just couldn't see that in the video. So, Rob, my last question is, what did God teach you or impress upon your heart during this trip?
Oh, gosh. I think what was hard for me is to be with the kids, to know the kids, especially in the orphanage, and then to see pictures of them there early, 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years that they've been there at this orphanage. And it took me a while to realize, oh my gosh, not only were they dropped off at a doorstep at the orphanage or hospital or police station to be abandoned, and then to be at a place, a scary place, to live with other kids for 3, 4, 5, and 6 years, not to be tucked in bed, not to be loved, not to have a mom and a dad, even though it might be a stepmom and her dad, that it hit home to me that these kids, everybody wants to be loved. We all want to be cherished and loved and respected and be a part of a family. And to see all these kids tough it up and to know that they don't have that to go to, that hit me really hard. So it makes me start thinking, my gosh, we need to step up our game here. We need to either go back or keep doing auctions for all the women that worked so hard at putting that together. This is serious stuff. These kids need to be loved. They need to be loved. So that, and also, when Nancy and I got married here in this church, I told her I wanted 10 kids. And she said, I'm done. When I'm done with kids. I've got 2 daughters, but we have Anna, which is wonderful, between the 2 of us. So I go into these orphanages. I think she checks my luggage every time I come home, my pockets, my backpack. So it's so tempting, you guys. These kids are so cute. And they really, really, really do appreciate all the effort and all the work and the money that we send down there. So especially that physical contact with them. So.
Thanks, guys. You can give them a round of applause. Yeah, what a great trip. Thanks for sharing. Now, I'm going to keep going because I don't want to keep you guys here too late. I know, lunch is happening after this, but I want to go back to my experience in youth ministry. I remember when I first started getting involved, I was actually still in high school. I was a student in the high school ministry, and I loved the fun and games of youth group. I loved it, and my faith was growing, and I was excited to share with these students the things I was learning and experiencing, and I wanted to do my best to encourage. I was working with a group of middle school boys, having a small group, and I want to do my best encouraging these middle school boys to learn who God was, and show them that I cared for them, and that youth group was an awesome place to have fun, and also a family that we had to support each other. And it's really kind of funny because now I'm looking back at when I first became an intern at the church a couple years after I started volunteering, and I took over the middle school department, right? The middle school ministry, and the kids that were coming into middle school that year actually are now going to be seniors and juniors in high school this year. And that's crazy to me. It makes me feel old. But I've watched these students. Don't roll your eyes. I saw that. I've watched these students go from these tiny little 6th graders, 7th graders, up to being mature high schoolers who are getting ready to go out into the world, and watching them grow and mature and go through phases. And it's been fantastic. And I've had lots of fun. And I have lots of fun with these guys. But looking back, there are probably some things that I would honestly do differently. I was young. I didn't know, I was just kind of put into this position, and I didn't have all the answers. I probably should have read 10 more books on the subject of leading a youth group. But there are probably a lot of things I would have done differently, or ways I would have gone about things differently. But it's been kind of miraculous how God has been so faithful through all that time, where I did not know what I was doing. I got through many years of serving, and to this point now, without any major incidents or lawsuits, and we're here now. And I've gone through seasons. I've gone through seasons of doubt, of discouragement, of exhaustion, both emotional and physical. But I've also had such moments of encouragement, seeing God working in the lives of students and seeing them make decisions to seek after God and growing in their faith. And moments where God has filled me with such great passion and excitement for what I'm doing and for life. And today, I want to challenge you to be adventurous in your faith, to step out and to take risks, to really experience what God has for you in life. There are so many times for myself where I've had to, in this process, where I've been forced to take risks or step out of my comfort zone. And there have been so many times where I've been faced with the choice to either remain in the safe and easy or to try something new and something that scared me. And I can tell you right now, I'm fairly introverted. I have a hard time going out and engaging in small talk. Maybe you've noticed that. I don't like doing the big talk and all that. It can be exhausting for me, right? And every day, I'm in a job where when I'm doing it well, I'm talking to people all the time. I'm forming new relationships all the time. So every day, I'm met with this challenge, with this risk of stepping out and doing something I'm uncomfortable with. And I can't tell you that this is something I do all the time, that I am successful in stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something that scares me or I'm uncomfortable with all the time. But when I do take that challenge, when I do step out, I have seen God's faithfulness in so many ways. And I've seen the reward far outweigh the risk. My question for you is, do you encounter chances in your life to step out, to go out of your comfort zone into things that may be scary or unknown? Do you take that chance when you come to it, or do you hold back? Do you stay in the safe and easy? Adventurous faith. Adventurous is big word these days. You see it everywhere, especially in the Pacific Northwest, especially kind of in my younger generation. This word adventure is everywhere. It's this exciting or unusual experience. It may also be bold, usually risky undertaking with an uncertain outcome. But there's something about adventure, even though it's risky, even though it's uncertain, there's something about adventure that I think we all crave. I think it comes from the stories that we've heard. I think it comes from the pictures and the movies that we've seen, the dreams that we've had, even a little bit the dissatisfaction we have with where we are in life now. We crave this adventure. And I know the students over here that I get to work with, I know that they have this craving for adventure. They're in school, and so many of them, they're just looking forward to the day when they can get out, right? The things they're going to do, the places they're going to go, the people they're going to be. No? Is that a no? Oh, they're looking forward to getting out and experiencing and growing and seeing the world. And maybe for you, maybe you've always wanted to try a new hobby. Or maybe you've always wanted to go to this destination, and you have a Pinterest board with all the things on it, where the pictures and the stories and the places to go, and it's this adventure that you crave. We all crave adventure. Today I want to challenge you to be adventurous in your faith, whatever amount of faith you have, whether it's giant, I can do anything faith, to little tiny, you know what, maybe I believe, maybe, I don't know. I want to challenge you, wherever you are, can you step out boldly, follow God into something risky and unknown without being certain of the outcome? When I ask you that question, does that make you feel a little nervous, a little excited, maybe a little bit of both? I know for me, it makes me feel both. When I think of the things that God is going to have me do in life in the next year, in the next 5 years, 10 years, I think of those adventures that he's going to take me on. It makes me feel both nervous and scared, but also excited. What adventures could God be calling you today? Could God be calling you to today? We need adventure. We need to find adventurous faith that takes our lives and radically transforms them from where we are now. The problem we face now is, where do we find this adventurous faith? How do we obtain that? I want us to look at the book of Joshua, and the series that we're doing now is my life verse, right? And my life verse is something that wasn't really picked. I didn't pick it out. It wasn't really something that God pointed out to me in a season of my life of struggle or of growth. But my name is Josh, specifically Joshua. And so I've always kind of felt this kinship with Joshua in the Bible, right? It's kind of like he and I are close, more than any other figure in the Bible. And I grew up hearing Joshua 1:9 all the time. It was something that my parents would give me. It's kind of given to me as a life verse from birth, right? And it's something that I remember as a kid, being very young, having it memorized. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. This verse, more than anything else, is a summary of the previous 8 verses. So in order to understand what's going on here, we have to look at the previous 8 verses. And in verse 1, Moses, the servant of the Lord, dies. And now Joshua is left in charge. And so God speaks to Joshua, and he gives him this task of leading the nation of Israel into the land promised to their people many generations ago through Abraham. Something they've been looking forward to for many generations. His task is to finally be the one who leads them in, to conquer the people who are in the land and establish this nation of Israel. The promises that God made to Moses, he carries over and he gives them to Joshua. He says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. He says, no one will be able to stand against you. He also tells Joshua to be strong and courageous. 3 times. 3 times. So we know it's important. Joshua, this is something you need to get in your head. Be strong and courageous. The last one is in verse 9. And he says, and I want you to contemplate with me the enormity and the challenge that Joshua was facing. It's his job to enter into an occupied foreign land, to conquer it, and establish the future nation of Israel, all while trying to fill Moses' shoes as a leader of a people that has been all sorts of trouble, right? We look at the books where Moses is leading the people of Israel. They are just like, they're off the wall. They're running off over here. They're disobeying God over here. They're complaining and grumbling all the time. They are not an easy people to lead. And I think if I was Joshua, I would have run away right then and there. You're asking me to do what? I'm taking over for who? But Joshua, he stays. And one of the biggest questions that's posed implicitly in the book of Joshua from the very start is Joshua worthy of being Moses' successor? Is he worthy of taking over for Moses? And the immediate answer in the context of Scripture is no. Right? There's in the Bible you have Abraham, Moses, and David, and then you have kind of everyone else in the Old Testament there, right? Abraham, Moses, and David, and then kind of everyone else. And Joshua definitely isn't Abraham, Moses, and David, and Joshua. And so you immediately know he's not. Moses is called the one the Lord knew face to face. He's the great prophet and lawgiver to the nation, and is called the servant of the Lord. This title, servant of the Lord, is important because it's only used of 3 people. It's used of Moses and David especially. And Moses, it's used actually 14 times in the book of Joshua. Moses, the servant of the Lord. It's used to describe him. And in the very beginning, in verse 1, it says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun. So there's this immediate comparison that the reader sees, that the tension that the reader feels of, is Joshua worthy to replace Moses, to fill his shoes? And it's like looking back on looking back on Moses and having this constant comparison is like looking back on the last great sports team that your city had, right? It's like looking back on the 95 Mariners and comparing the current players and the coaches. It's like looking back on the 2013 Seahawks and comparing the players and the coaches. And hopefully they're going to do well this year, but I don't know. It looks good so far. But for Joshua, this test of his worthiness, the question isn't answered until the very end of the book. Till the very end of Joshua, in chapter 24, verse 29, it says this. After all these things, Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died. He did it. Somehow, he took over for the most revered leader of Israel and led an unruly nation to accomplish one of the greatest feats of his history, and was given the same unique title as Moses. He was called Joshua, the servant of the Lord. He was somehow worthy of that title. After all this time, after all the struggles, after that giant task that he was given. Let's go back to verse 9. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. I want to look at this verse, and when you see it, I want you to realize that strength and courage is secondary. It's a secondary gift from God. God doesn't magically make Joshua courageous and enough to accomplish the many challenges ahead of him, or strong enough to lead this stubborn and disobedient people. The primary gift of God in the book of the primary gift of God that we see in this verse and we see in life, the primary gift of God is himself. He gives himself, the assurance that he would never leave. It is the antidote of fear and the source of courage and strength. It's a transformative knowledge to have, right? It transforms how we live if we can have that in our hearts and in our minds. But we still forget it, right? We still forget that God is with us, and we get nervous and scared all the time. And that's why he tells Joshua, have I not commanded you? I'm commanding you. Don't forget I am with you. We don't want to overlook what he says in the previous two verses, where he says in verses 7 and 8, you must obey the law I have given you. Meditate on it day and night. Keep it on your lips, in your heart, on your mind, so that you'll be careful to do all that it says. I didn't really want to bring these verses into it because it's kind of uncomfortable. But what he's effectively saying to Joshua is, don't you dare take your eyes off of me. Don't you dare take your eyes off of me. Our relationship must be number one. Joshua must be intensely focused on God and be consistently faithful to him and to his word. And it's the same for us. We must be intensely focused on God and be consistently faithful to him. And that's the way that Joshua is able to step out in courageous faith, an adventurous faith, and do something that was nearly impossible, to lead this nation. The story of Joshua's life is of him staying focused on God and trusting him in his words, in what he said to him, and trusting in the promised presence of God, that was realized through the many challenges and the struggles, right? We see it. But God's presence isn't passive, and this is important. God's presence, when he says, I am with you, it isn't passive. He doesn't say, I'm with you, Joshua, and I'm ready to watch you get your butt kicked by Jericho. No. But what he says is, I am with you. I will guide you. I will fight your battles for you when you are not strong enough. You can count on me. It's reminiscent of Jesus when he's talking with his disciples. And he says, he's sending them out to all the world. He says, go out to all the world, making disciples, baptizing, and teaching them my commands. And then he says this, and surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. The secret of adventurous faith is this, is God saying, I have this path set out before you. It will be hard, and you will have moments of unknown, moments of fear, moments of discouragement. but I am with you, and I will lead you through to the other side. Therefore, have strength in the face of difficulties and hardships. Have courage to do the things I call you to. Trust in me. Keep your eyes fixed on me while you step out into this adventure I am calling you to. God's presence for us today isn't passive. It's active. Sometimes, if we never take risks with our faith, never seek out that adventure, we don't see God's faithfulness. We don't see God's presence. We try, I've seen this kind of trend, especially in Western culture, where we try to make ourselves capable of living completely on our own power, safe and secure. We don't find ourselves relying on God for very much. If God doesn't provide, I won't make it through the next day. Many of us don't find ourselves in that situation very often. We try and make our lives safe and secure. But safe and secure faith has a tendency to shrink and even die when we stay inside our comfort zones without taking risks. We don't see God's presence. We don't see God's faithfulness. Our faith has a tendency to shrink and even die. So I want to ask you, what adventures in your faith could God be calling you to today? Some of you may be living lives of tons of adventurous faith, right? But is there something more that God may be calling you to? Some direction that you may be scared to go? Something that you're reluctant to do because of the risk? Some of you have held back and lived a faith that is cautious and reserved. You have loving action. You love people. You do, but your faith stays inside of where it's safe, where you are safe, where you're not taking risks. Let me encourage you today that when you step out, there's a reward waiting, and it far outweighs the risk. Some of us are in a place today where there's no action behind our faith, and our faith is in danger. James 2:17 says, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. Our faith may be in danger. Do not be scared of the things that you may have to do, the places that God may take you to. For there's a greatness in following God out into the unknown. Don't underestimate how your faith can grow and be inspired when you step out and risk. The promise that God made Joshua applies to us today, and that's why this verse is so amazing for me, why personally it's so impactful. I have this path set out before you. It will be hard, and you will have moments of unknown, fear, and discouragement, but I am with you. And I will lead you through to the other side. Therefore, have strength in the face of difficulties and hardship, and have courage to do the things I call you to. Trust in me. Keep your eyes fixed on me while you step out into this adventure I'm calling you to. Now we must seek that adventure, right? We must seek it. We can't wait for it. We can't be passive about our faith, just as God isn't passive with his presence. What adventure might God be calling you to today? Is it to get involved in the youth ministry? Is it to be praying for students, helping at events, being a mentor or a small group leader, investing in students, investments that will last a lifetime, relationships that will last a lifetime? Or do you have gifts and talents and resources that God has given you that you can use to build up the kingdom of God, to love people? Or maybe it's the children's ministry. You are being drawn to being a Sunday school teacher as you step out into adventurous faith. I know both of those options, youth and children's, can be very risky and kind of scary for a lot of people. Like, we had to hang out with who and do what? Trust me, they don't bite all the time. Or maybe it's outreach. Maybe there's some group in your community that you feel called to minister to support. I challenge you to find the people around you here who will partner with you, who can help you and can really go out and change lives. Or maybe it's just this. Maybe you just need to get involved in a Christian community. Maybe you need to find a small group that will pray for you, that will help keep you accountable, where your faith will grow, where you can serve together. Maybe that's your next step, where your risk is, where your faith is adventurous. But I want you to listen to God today, where he draws you, and accept the challenge. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, I need you to help me with this, are you willing to do that? Be adventurous. Take that risk because God is always with you. This promise is active. I want to tell you real quickly about one of our youth leaders. I sent him an email a while back, about a year and a couple months ago, about coming to camp and helping at camp because someone on staff told me that he would be a great leader at a camp. And so I sent him an email and I get a reply back that's kind of cautious. He's like, well, I've never done anything like this before, but let's meet and talk about it. And so me and Raphael got coffee. You guys all know Raphael. We got coffee, and he told me about how he's never done anything like this before. He was nervous. He didn't know if he would be any good at it. He had a lot of questions. But he said someone had challenged him in his life to step out and take risks and with his faith and to see what happened. And so he said, okay, I'm nervous, I'm scared, but I'll give it a shot, right? And he comes to camp with a rowdy cabin of middle school boys, and he loved it, right? He was one of the most natural camp counselors I've ever met. He had so much fun. He was so gifted at it. And then we come back from camp, and he starts helping out on Wednesday nights. And I love all my middle school boys over there. They are great. But we have a hard time focusing in small groups. Right, guys? Yeah, we have a hard time focusing in small groups. We have a hard time getting through the questions or listening to each other. Our attention spans are all over the place. And I've been doing middle school boys groups for a very long time. And it's always the same. It's always the same. It's so much fun. But it's also not easy. Raphael comes in, and this guy is like the middle school boy whisperer. Right? He's able to take a group of middle school boys and have them all seated around in a circle, paying attention to each other, not throwing things at each other, and get through a small group and get through these questions. And it's amazing. He came in nervous and scared with this risk. But he discovered gifts he never knew he had. He discovered a passion for and love for students and a passion for sharing Jesus and his faith with these students that he never knew he had, all by stepping out into something uncomfortable and unknown and risky and giving it a shot. We all need this adventurous faith to follow God down the paths he will take us. Faith that God is always with us. And that faith gives us courage and strength in the face of fear and discouragement. When I recently went to Honduras, there's one thing that God put on my heart. Well, there are several things, but there's one thing that specifically stood out when I was playing with the kids, when I was seeing them interact with each other and hearing their stories about where they came from and their lives and their struggles. The one thing that God impressed in my heart then is this: every child and student needs to be loved and cared for. This, for me, has personally renewed my vision for the youth group, because we have to be a church where students who don't feel loved and cared for are drawn. There are so many kids in Honduras who don't feel loved and cared for, and we are doing an amazing job of ministering to them, of helping them find places where they would be loved and cared for, like Nico and San Jose. But there are so many kids here too, so many students, so many children out in our community that don't feel loved and cared for. We need to be a church where those students feel loved and cared for and are drawn to. We're a place where there are people who will genuinely love and care for them no matter where they come from, no matter who they are. To you guys, the students in the group, I need your help. I need your help to help me create an atmosphere and a culture where anyone can walk into and feel welcome and at home. There are so many risks and adventures that are in that. in that, right? Stepping out and loving and caring for someone and meeting those people and taking those risks. So many that I personally will have to face, but that we also as a church have to face. I mentioned the student ministry because that's what I'm close with, and I know the impact that caring, loving adults will have. But this church is bigger than the youth ministry, and the things that we do here in the community and the way we care for people. It's when the people of the church step out with adventurous faith, the whole church is transformed. When it starts with one and then another, and then we're all stepping out in adventurous faith, the whole church is transformed. From children's ministry to youth ministry, worship to small groups, serving in the community. Let's together build this church into a place that people on the outside, visitors that come in, they look at this church and they see the hands and feet of Christ. They can't deny that there's something happening here, where people are drawn to Jesus by a love they can't resist when they walk in these doors. Let's build this great caring network that is the church's vision for many years. Let's build this great caring network that changes our community forever. Let's step out with adventurous faith made possible by the gift of God's never-failing presence. Stand with me as we close in prayer. Dear God, I thank you so much for this church, for these people here, where we have the opportunity to love and to be adventurous with our faith. I pray that promise that you've given us to be with us no matter where we go, actively holding us up when we are weak. I pray that would get rid of all the fear and discouragement that we feel and encourage us to step out in new challenges, new adventures. In Jesus' name.